There are a lot of freelancing platforms out there. Some are better than others. And a new challenger arrived in the last year called A.Team. And I actually had the chance to do some work on the platform last year, and it was a delightful experience. But given that they're an early stage startup, their product backend could use a little optimization. And specifically, we're going to redesign the talent profile page today. But what's wrong with this, really? A couple of things jump out to me at first. Namely, we've got this full width text here, which is just a big no-no in the UX world. You never put text in full width containers. These controls are kind of hidden away from me on the top left. My focus is here in the middle, but the interactivity happens up here. They're not really emphasizing projects very well at all. This featured image, which at least for designers is usually a very beautiful product image, is subdued and darkened behind the text, and there's just no value there. There's so much more we could do to showcase work. This project button is also just hidden underneath all of that, and I have to scroll quite a ways to find it. And then finally, all this content over to the left here is kind of, it feels a little out of place. I'm not sure if this is part of the profile or if it's just metadata. And then the job listings down here, this is just a bulleted list. We could do better here. We could definitely emphasize this in a way that's a little more modern and clean. So we're going to take the talent profile and bring it into 2023. As always, we'll start with the brand guidelines. Here's the color schema the A-Team is currently using. They're nice blacks, beautiful orange and purple, and they're using Inter for a font, which veterans of the channel will know is one of the most flexible product fonts. You can build pretty much any product UI with Inter, so we're not going to change that. We're just going to keep it as is. Now, specifically, what would you want to do with a talent dashboard? Obviously, I just want to edit my profile details, and here is pretty much everything I'd want to include in a profile. I'd also want to toggle my availability to let the system know whether or not I'm available for any work, and then preview my changes before I publish them to clients. I mean, that's really it in a nutshell. We're not going to get too fancy here. But enough rambling on, let's get going on this redesign. Although I really love the A-Team accent colors, the first treatment we're doing here is making the navigation a dark black instead of purple. We just don't want to be pulling that much attention to the navigation. People know it's there, we don't need to be constantly reminding them, so a nice dark saturated black will do the job. Other than this color treatment, we're not really changing anything about the primary navigation, so we're just going to skip over this. A common design pattern for products that have their primary navigation on the left is to have a separate header navigation on the main content that usually contains information like your account details and other global controls. So we're going to add that in here now and give the user the ability to access their profile menu and then just change their availability from anywhere on the site. Next, we're going to build the primary header for the profile itself, and we're going to go with the paradigm that what you're looking at here is what potential clients will see, and we'll have a separate interface for performing edits. So we're going to add a lot of styles here to make this look appealing to clients, so that you can see exactly what a prospect is seeing, and then you can make adjustments accordingly. Of course, one of the first things I'm doing is applying a container on the text to restrict the width to a certain degree. We don't want people craning their necks back and forth to read our bios. Really spending a lot of time on the header here because it's really your first impression that any prospect gets. So this needs to kind of knock their socks off a little bit. So we're adding in a profile image as well and then floating that on top of the banner but halfway down. And this is a very common treatment for profile UIs. You should probably steal this if you're building one yourself. And here you can see me realizing that the profile image is just a little too small. You can't really make out the face of the person you're looking at. So bumping that up and squaring it off a bit. Now, I just want to share that I cut through about half an hour of raw footage there to just underscore how long it took me to arrive at this treatment, looking at lots of reference images, lots of other profile experiences on Dribbble, and just kind of realizing the ideal layout for this sort of information. And this is generally how modern product design works. It's just one lunatic staring at something for hours until it looks remotely clean and usable. As you can probably tell, I really wanted that quick call to action text to work, but it was just throwing off the alignment in the header too much. So I've taken it and moved it into a separate container here to give that personal touch to the profile. I really tried to think deeply about the information architecture on this page, and from the perspective of a prospective client, what's really important to me, right? Obviously, I need to know who they are, what kind of work they do, a general understanding of their experience, but then beyond that, there's probably several other categories of information that I want to see. Lots of metadata, things like portfolio, skills. So immediately after the header and the bio, which is kind of its own little space, I'm adding a separate section where we can just put as much metadata about this candidate as we want, and then organize it in a way where the most relevant stuff is floated to the top. Now, when we're displaying all of the social links for a talent member, one of them is usually more important than the rest, and that's the link to their portfolio site. So we're giving that more horizontal width here to indicate to the user, hey, you should probably click on this one before you go to the other ones. And of course, one of the strongest ways to convince someone that a talent member is a good fit for them is social proof. So a dedicated section to showcase reviews from any past work on A.Team is essential here. We're really kind of putting this forward and indicating to the client, hey, this person perhaps wasn't the most responsive, but their deliverable quality was awesome. Now, of course, none of this really matters unless that talent member is available for hire, right? It doesn't matter that I'm a great match if they just aren't available. So this is very important information that I've neglected to include in the header somewhere. So right now I'm just trying to figure out exactly where the most appropriate place for this is. And I don't actually figure this out until much later in the design, but for now we're just placing it in the header because it's just so important. Like, clients need to know this. Ah yes, and we're finally getting to one of the biggest problems in the existing design, and that was that the portfolio pieces just weren't emphasized at all. It was purely text-based, nothing was like calling my attention to them. So here we're going to apply a couple of treatments to help clients get emotionally invested in perhaps reading a little bit more about a portfolio piece by leading with some really interesting imagery from that portfolio piece and then following it up with text metadata. Now, of course, there are talent members on this platform that aren't designers, maybe they're project managers or developers, and although they could probably come up with some kind of thumbnail image, it's important that we have the UI accommodate a no image paradigm. So that's why we're putting the image at the top here, so that once we remove it, the text just floats up and replaces the image, and there's really no significant adjustment in the UI required. Now, I wanted to include a call to action here to encourage clients to read more. Maybe we could put some case studies or just more imagery in a dedicated portfolio page. But I didn't want to put a heavy saturated button there because it's really not the most important thing on the page. The most important thing is, of course, the call to action to reach out to that talent member and potentially work with them. So we solve that problem by just making it a link and adding the accent color of the page. And now I'm realizing that since we've already given the talent member a bio, we don't really need that extra blurb at the top, and instead we can replace it with the available now call to action, which takes a lot more confusion out of the header because there's not that many things pulling for your visual attention anymore, but places it in a manner that the client is going to be aware of it almost immediately. So I feel like this is a much more appropriate treatment for the availability widget. And now we're tackling the work history part of the profile, and I want to underscore that whenever you have lists of information that you're trying to display to a user, a bulleted list is probably the last way you want to attempt to display that information. It's appropriate in large text documents or articles, but if you can get away from it, your designs are going to feel so much more modern and polished if you just display everything in sequence, but then apply lots of spacing padding and maybe some outlines to separate highlight the items than opposed to just using a standard bulleted list. You're probably thinking, damn, dude, you're really spending a lot of time worrying about this. You could have just used the bulleted list. But man, I feel like this just looks so much cleaner and will be much more likely to provoke an interaction from the client than just a simple, boring list. Now, as with most highly stylized pages like the profile page, it's often appropriate to have a second page that is exclusively dedicated to editing the content of the previous page. It totally solves the problem of finding ways to add contextual edit buttons on a often complicated UI. So here, I'm just building a really simple form that has all of the fields that you would see throughout the page, separated into major sections, which you're seeing divided with this tab navigation here, in a dedicated edit UI with a special publish button, which will reveal those changes to any future clients on your public profile. And I'll spare you from having to watch me create a super basic form in Figma, so we'll just skip to the end and review everything there. Oh, baby, that's a nice profile right there. It's so... God, I really feel like this does so much more to emphasize the individual personality of the talent on the platform while just being super easy to consume. All of the information that I'll need as a potential client is floated to the top. I know their general location, their work category, their experience, and whether or not they're available. I can see all their relevant social links and skills here. And then I also have a place where the talent can kind of showcase their personality a little bit and their projects. And on top of all of this, we have this little video down here that I think would be a great way for talent to kind of pop a little more and show the uniqueness of what it means to be on a platform like A.Team. And you could click this, then obviously it would zoom in and take up more of the screen. Hey there. My name's Mark, and I'm a bit of a weird designer. I don't know, it would give this platform that little pizzazz that seems to be missing from the vast majority of talent networks out there. And of course, if anyone wants to swap their availability on the fly, they can do so in the header. And there's also no ambiguity as to how you edit this now. There's an edit link clearly here, which changes the perspective entirely into a editor where I can actually update all of the information that appears on this page, but in a separate controlled environment. I feel like that's a more appropriate flow for something like this. But I hope you found this one interesting and meaningful. As always, if you have any feedback on this design, if you would have done it differently, I'd love to hear so in the comments. A designer's job is sadly never finished. I hope you enjoyed this one, folks. Have a great week. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.